Welcome, history enthusiasts. Today we drift into the shadows of one of the most fascinating and dangerous realms of power, the court of the Dark Queens. Get ready to uncover the secrets, the intrigue, and the chilling truths that make survival here nearly impossible. Before we dive in, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more thrilling journeys through history's most captivating stories. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss an adventure into the past. Imagine stepping into a world that exists almost entirely on the edge of perception, where reality is filtered through fear, beauty, and power, and where every moment carries with it a weight far heavier than the simplest of decisions outside the palace walls. You would think that entering a royal court, no matter how strict or formal, would merely require some knowledge of etiquette, a basic understanding of hierarchy, and perhaps an appreciation for luxury. But the court of the Dark Queens is no ordinary court. It is a living organism, a maze of political intrigue and psychological manipulation, and it is designed not for comfort or civility, but for the survival of those who understand its rules, and for the punishment of those who do not. To enter this court is to step into a world where appearances are as deadly as daggers, where words can wound more profoundly than any sword, and where the smallest misstep can mean exile, humiliation, or even death. As you pass through the enormous towering gates of the palace, you would first be struck by the scale of it all. The architecture itself speaks of power: soaring ceilings, intricately carved walls, marble floors that echo underfoot, and corridors that seem endless. Every element is carefully curated to instill awe, but also a subtle, almost imperceptible sense of unease. Statues of past rulers, some angelic, some grotesque, watch silently, their eyes seeming to follow your every movement. Tapestries depicting triumph, betrayal, and conquest line the walls, reminding visitors that the line between glory and disgrace is thin, and often crossed in an instant. The court does not merely exist in the physical realm, it exists as a psychological landscape where every decoration, every shadow, and every echo is a calculated part of an intricate performance. From the moment you arrive, the energy of the court is palpable. Courtiers, dressed in layers of velvet, silk, and intricate embroidery, move with a careful grace, yet their eyes are constantly scanning, calculating, measuring. Smiles are rare, and when they appear, they are often shields, concealing deeper intentions or hidden agendas. In this court, no one is ever truly relaxed. The tension hums beneath the surface like a low, constant vibration. As a newcomer, you would feel it immediately: the unspoken rules, the invisible hierarchies, the sense that every action is under scrutiny. You might enter expecting to witness grandeur, to be dazzled by jewels and ceremonies. But what hits you first is a sense of danger that lurks beneath every flourish of silk and every glittering smile. The Dark Queens themselves are not merely rulers, they are living embodiments of authority, mystery, and fear. Their presence dominates the room long before they arrive, whispered about by those who serve them, mythologized in the stories passed from one courtier to another. To look upon them is to confront power in its purest form. Their eyes are sharp, assessing, capable of cutting through deception, pretense, and bravado. They understand the subtle language of body posture, tone, and even fleeting expressions, and they wield that understanding as skillfully as a general might command an army. A misplaced bow, an accidental glance, or a moment of hesitation can mark you as a potential threat, or as someone too weak to be of use. There is a constant underlying question in the air: do you belong here, or are you already on the path to ruin? One of the most deceptive elements of the court is its elegance. The halls gleam with polished marble, chandeliers scatter light in every direction, and the air carries faint perfumes of exotic flowers and rich oils. The beauty is almost hypnotic, but it is a weapon as well as a lure. It is designed to disorient newcomers, to make them forget the danger that lurks behind every polite smile and every courteous bow. Courtiers move like actors on a stage, performing their roles with a perfection born of necessity. Every gesture, every phrase, every measured laugh is a tool used to project power, form alliances, or manipulate rivals. In such an environment, the inexperienced or naive visitor is immediately at a disadvantage. What appears to be harmless conversation is, more often than not, a test, a probe to assess knowledge, loyalty, and subtlety. The first day in particular is the hardest. You would find yourself navigating corridors lined with mirrors, where your own reflection seems to follow you, reminding you constantly of the attention you are under. Every step is accompanied by the silent, calculating gaze of others. The courtier's eyes flicker like predators, watching for signs of arrogance, insecurity, or ignorance. Even your clothing, your posture, and the way you carry yourself are under judgment. In this court, nothing exists in isolation. A gesture that might be trivial elsewhere, a laugh, a sigh, a glance at the wrong person, could be interpreted as a declaration of intent, a challenge to authority, or an alignment with one faction over another. Survival requires not only awareness, but an almost supernatural sensitivity to the invisible currents of power flowing through every room, every conversation, and every interaction. As you sit at the royal table, you begin to understand the subtleties of court life. The seating arrangements are never arbitrary. Your place at the table, the order in which you are served, even the way your plate is positioned relative to others communicates a hidden hierarchy that is as rigid as it is perilous. Observing the reactions of others as food is served or conversation begins reveals far more than words ever could. A slight hesitation, a nervous glance, or a carefully timed sip of wine can signal loyalty or dissent. The dark queens, ever watchful, enjoy these nuances. They recognize that the court is a stage, and each participant, including you, is part of a drama they orchestrate. Your every reaction, no matter how small, is a performance that will be judged and remembered. Yet the danger is not only social or psychological, it is also deeply practical. The queens have long memories and skilled agents, men and women trained to observe, report, and execute their will. Rumors, slights, and perceived betrayals travel faster than gossip anywhere else. A seemingly insignificant misstep can be recorded, discussed, and used against you later. Survival in this court requires not only charm and wit, but a constant vigilance. Even the most careful courtiers often fail, undone by a momentary lapse in attention or a misunderstanding of the subtle, unspoken rules. The court thrives on uncertainty. You never know which conversation is sincere and which is a trap, which gesture is a test and which is genuine. Even friendships are suspect. Alliances shift as often as the shadows in the candlelit corridors. Trust is not a gift in this court. It is a calculated risk, a gamble with consequences that can be dire. You quickly learn that your own instincts are both an asset and a liability. To survive, you must learn to read others as skillfully as they read you, to anticipate actions before they occur, and to navigate a maze of intrigue that is constantly changing shape. And then there is the matter of secrecy. Nothing in the court is as it seems. Conversations whispered behind closed doors may carry the weight of life or death. Orders issued in casual tones can have consequences far beyond their apparent meaning. Courtiers are adept at masking intentions, and the dark queens themselves are masters of deception. They create an environment in which nothing is safe, nothing is predictable, and the smallest mistake can have monumental consequences. You would find yourself questioning every word, every gesture, every thought, realizing that even your most private reflections could become a weapon in the hands of someone more cunning. The sensory experience alone is enough to overwhelm. The sights, the sounds, and even the smells of the court combine to create an atmosphere that is both intoxicating and terrifying. Candlelight flickers against golden walls. The scent of burning incense mingles with the aroma of exotic spices, and the soft murmur of conversation underpins an ever-present tension. Music drifts from distant chambers, haunting melodies that suggest both beauty and danger. Every detail is orchestrated to affect your mind and emotions, to test your reactions, and to remind you of the power that surrounds you. You are never truly alone, never truly unobserved. Every step you take is measured, recorded, and potentially judged. By the end of the first day, the weight of the court is almost tangible. You begin to understand that survival is not simply about avoiding mistakes. It is about comprehending the very nature of the environment you have entered. The court of the Dark Queens is not a place where ignorance is bliss. It is a place where knowledge, perception, and intuition are your only shields. And yet, even with all your senses alert and your mind sharpened, you know instinctively that survival is far from guaranteed. The Queen's power is absolute, their understanding of human nature profound, and their patience for error fleeting. You are a newcomer in a world that has already shaped its rules over generations, and you must learn them quickly, or be consumed by them. Even as you attempt to adapt, the psychological pressure is relentless. You notice it in the way courtiers converse in half-whispers, in the sudden, fleeting glances exchanged across rooms, in the subtle gestures that signal alignment or defiance. Every interaction requires calculation. Every smile is scrutinized, and every word is weighed. You begin to realize that even the smallest lapse in attention, a moment of distraction, a poorly chosen phrase, or a visible show of emotion, could be fatal. And the more you learn, the more you recognize how little you truly know. The court is a puzzle of endless complexity, a shifting labyrinth where every path carries risk, and the consequences of failure are severe. By nightfall, you may find yourself exhausted, not just physically but mentally. Your mind races with observations, hypotheses, and strategies. Every conversation replays in your head, every gesture is analyzed, every subtle cue is catalogued. Sleep may come fitfully, for even in rest, the court's influence lingers. Shadows in the corridors, distant echoes of footsteps, and the faint scent of incense become reminders that the world you have entered is far from ordinary. You are acutely aware that tomorrow will demand the same vigilance, the same attention, the same skill, and perhaps even more cunning. The week ahead stretches before you like an uncharted path, filled with dangers both visible and hidden, and you understand with growing clarity that mere survival will be an achievement in itself. In this court, power is fluid, perception is reality, and the margin for error is vanishingly small. Every moment is a negotiation, every glance is an argument, and every word spoken carries the weight of consequence. To enter this court is to step into a world where the rules are invisible, where loyalty is transactional, and where fear is both tool and weapon. You realize that the experience is not simply about observing history, but about participating in it, and that participation demands more than courage. It demands strategy, awareness, and an unyielding will to endure. As the days progress in the court of the Dark Queens, the initial awe you felt on your first arrival begins to evolve into a deeper, more unsettling awareness. This is a place where the currency of survival is not merely obedience or etiquette, but an intricate understanding of power and the art of strategy. The courtiers around you are not merely individuals. They are players in a vast, invisible chess game that stretches across every corridor, every chamber, every whispered conversation. In this court, politics is not a matter of debate or discussion. It is a living, breathing organism, as ruthless and precise as any battlefield, and you, as a newcomer, are expected to navigate it without faltering, a task more daunting than any you have faced before. From the very beginning, it becomes evident that the court operates on layers of subtlety and influence. Authority is absolute, but it is wielded in ways that often defy logic or expectation. A queen's command may be delivered softly, almost imperceptibly, yet the consequences of disobedience are swift and severe. The courtiers have learned to read these cues with precision, understanding that survival is less about direct confrontation and more about anticipating the intentions of those in power. Every conversation you witness is layered with meaning. A compliment may mask a veiled insult, a question may conceal an accusation, and a smile may be a warning rather than a gesture of goodwill. Your mind is constantly challenged, forced to decipher signals that often contradict each other, and the constant effort leaves little room for rest. One of the most dangerous aspects of the court is the fragility of alliances. Here, loyalty is fluid, shifting as quickly as the queen's moods or as political circumstances demand. A courtier who stands beside you today may turn against you tomorrow, swayed by promises of favor, threats of punishment, or subtle manipulation. The ability to maintain alliances is therefore a skill that requires not only intelligence, but an almost preternatural intuition about human behavior. You must learn to read the smallest signs of hesitation or enthusiasm, to notice fleeting glances and subtle changes in tone, and to understand which actions are genuine and which are strategic. One misread signal can place you on the wrong side of a faction, leaving you vulnerable to both overt and covert attacks. Rumor is a particularly potent weapon in this court. Whispers travel swiftly, and the source of information is often concealed. A false story, a misinterpreted action, or even an inadvertent expression can be twisted into evidence of disloyalty. Courtiers learn quickly that what is said in confidence may become a tool for manipulation, used to justify punishment or to undermine rivals. For a newcomer, this environment is almost impossible to navigate without careful observation and discretion. Every word you speak, every story you hear, and every reaction you display must be analyzed and weighed, for ignorance or impulsiveness can carry catastrophic consequences. The queens themselves are masters of these subtle forms of control. They understand the psychological mechanics of fear, admiration, and desire, and they employ these forces with precision. A courtier may be publicly praised one day, only to find themselves the target of a campaign of undermining the next. This unpredictable exercise of power ensures that no one grows complacent, that vigilance becomes instinctual, and that the court remains a place of constant tension. The queens do not merely rule, they orchestrate, observing and influencing interactions at every level, to ensure that their authority is unchallenged, and that loyalty is continually tested. Observation, therefore, becomes both a necessity and a skill. You learn quickly to watch not only the actions of those around you, but also the reactions to those actions. A simple conversation at a side table may reveal the balance of power between factions, the alliances forming in secret, and the individuals most likely to act against you if given the opportunity. It is a world where intuition matters as much as intelligence, where the ability to anticipate moves before they occur can determine whether you survive or fall. In this environment, strategy is not optional, it is survival itself. And yet, the politics of the court extend beyond personal alliances and rivalries. They are embedded in every ritual, every ceremony, every formal interaction. Seating arrangements, the order in which guests are addressed, and even the distribution of food and drink carry symbolic weight. These symbols communicate status, influence, and favor, and they are observed meticulously by all. A misstep in protocol is not merely an error, it is an exposure, a sign that you do not understand the rules, and therefore a potential threat to the established order. Learning these rules requires attention to detail, memory, and careful analysis, for one mistake can become the leverage for your enemies to undermine or remove you. The environment is further complicated by the presence of spies and informants. The queens maintain a network of individuals whose sole purpose is to observe, report, and manipulate. Courtiers are aware that their words and actions may be reported at any time, and this constant scrutiny amplifies the psychological pressure of the court. Trust is therefore a scarce commodity, and relationships must be carefully managed. To form a genuine bond is risky. To display loyalty too openly can make you a target. To remain aloof may signal weakness. Every decision carries implications that extend far beyond the immediate moment. At the same time, the queens are masters of reward and punishment, and they wield both with equal skill. Favor can be intoxicating, a nod from the queen, a smile, a public acknowledgement. These small gestures can elevate a courtier, secure alliances, and even grant access to secrets and influence. But the same mechanisms can be used to punish, humiliate, or destroy. A courtier who misjudges the situation may find themselves ostracized, denied opportunity, or worse. The threat of punishment is omnipresent, creating an atmosphere of constant tension in which every word, every action, and every thought carries weight. Survival in this environment requires not only cunning but also emotional control. The court is designed to exploit fear, pride, ambition, and desire. Courtiers are constantly tested, pushed to react to unexpected events, and forced to navigate the volatile mix of personal ambition and political necessity. Emotional reactions are monitored and interpreted. A moment of anger, impatience, or sorrow can be construed as weakness or dissent. To survive, you must cultivate patience, discipline, and the ability to mask your true feelings while observing those of others with precision. The stakes are heightened by the knowledge that the consequences of missteps are often invisible until it is too late. The court operates in layers, where actions ripple outward, affecting relationships and alliances in ways that may not be immediately apparent. A casual remark can destabilize an alliance, a misinterpreted gesture can provoke suspicion, and an overlooked detail can lead to disaster. You learn that the court is a living organism, and you are a part of its web, where every interaction has consequences, intended or otherwise. In addition to social and political maneuvering, survival requires acute attention to the subtleties of communication. Words are seldom used at face value. Tone, inflection, and timing carry as much meaning as the literal content. Courtiers learn to speak carefully, to measure the impact of every statement, and to recognize when silence is more powerful than speech. Miscommunication is a hazard that can lead to humiliation, loss of favor, or even death. As a newcomer, you quickly realize that your natural impulses, your desire for honesty, your need for clarity, your expectation of trust, may be liabilities in this environment. The queen's power also extends into the personal lives of their courtiers. Marriage, family, friendships, and alliances are all subject to their influence. Romantic relationships may be manipulated to serve political ends. Friendships may be encouraged or undermined depending on convenience. The court does not simply demand loyalty, it dictates the terms of personal engagement, intertwining the political, the social, and the emotional into a single unrelenting system of control. For those unprepared for this level of intrusion, the experience can be disorienting and terrifying, as it becomes clear that no aspect of life within the court is free from scrutiny or influence. As you continue to navigate this environment, the complexity of its power dynamics becomes more apparent. Every interaction is a negotiation, every gesture a potential declaration of loyalty or dissent. Even silence is a form of communication, and the absence of action may be interpreted in ways that are both subtle and severe. The queen's ability to manipulate these dynamics ensures that the court is never static. It is a constantly shifting landscape, in which survival demands constant vigilance, adaptability, and foresight. The psychological pressure is relentless. You begin to understand that the court is designed to test every facet of human nature: courage, patience, intelligence, emotional resilience, and moral judgment. It is not enough to react appropriately. You must anticipate events, understand hidden agendas, and navigate a labyrinth of competing interests. The mental toll is immense, as every moment requires focus, calculation, and the suppression of instinctive responses. Even the most experienced courtiers are tested, and newcomers often find themselves overwhelmed, their confidence eroded by the constant awareness that one misstep could be fatal. In this environment, perception is reality. How others perceive you determines your status, your influence, and your survival. Courtiers spend countless hours managing their image, cultivating alliances, and projecting an appearance of competence and composure. Every detail of dress, demeanor, and behavior is carefully considered, as even minor errors can have consequences that extend far beyond the immediate moment. You learn quickly that survival is as much about managing perception as it is about actual ability or knowledge. In the court of the Dark Queens, what people think of you can be as dangerous as any direct threat. In the court of the Dark Queens, opulence is more than decoration. It is a weapon, a strategy, and a constant test. From the moment you first step into the grand halls, the eye is assaulted with a richness so overwhelming it seems almost unreal. Golden chandeliers hang like frozen flames, their countless crystals refracting light across walls lined with tapestries that depict both history and legend in vivid detail. The floors are polished marble so reflective that one feels they are walking on a surface both solid and liquid, and even the slightest misstep seems to echo with consequence. Every element of the court has been designed to impress, intimidate, and above all to remind you of your place within this grand theater of power. But beneath this dazzling exterior lies danger, as subtle and lethal as the finest poison. You may walk past tables overflowing with exotic fruits, delicate pastries, and platters of meats roasted to perfection, all served on china inlaid with gold. At first glance, these feasts are symbols of wealth, refinement, and the queen's magnanimity, yet the same table that nourishes and delights is also a stage for strategy and manipulation. Every morsel, every goblet of wine, every gesture during a meal is laden with significance. Who is seated next to whom is never arbitrary. Proximity implies favor or suspicion. The selection of dishes, the order in which they are presented, the timing of courses, all are carefully controlled and observed. A simple choice, like picking up a particular glass, may signal loyalty, ambition, or defiance. Nothing in the court is without meaning, and you quickly realize that even indulgence carries risk. The Queen's brilliance in orchestrating these displays lies in their understanding of human desire. Luxury and abundance are disorienting. They overwhelm the senses, seducing newcomers into a false sense of security. The beauty, fragrance, and sumptuousness of the court create an intoxicating atmosphere, one that can dull your vigilance and leave you susceptible to manipulation. Courtiers who fail to maintain focus may find themselves slipping into dangerous patterns of behavior, revealing ambitions, insecurities, or alliances that others are quick to exploit. To survive, you must learn to enjoy the spectacle without succumbing to its distractions, to appreciate beauty without being blinded by it, and to partake in luxury while remaining ever alert. Even the seemingly trivial details are orchestrated with precision. The fabrics adorning the halls, the colors of the tapestries, the placement of statues and fountains, each element conveys messages of power, lineage, and divine right. Courtiers are trained to recognize these subtleties, and the queens test the newcomer's ability to read them. To misinterpret a gesture, a display, or a symbol is to reveal your ignorance, and in this court, ignorance can be fatal. The court does not merely reward the clever, it actively seeks to expose the unprepared, the naïve, and the unwary. You begin to understand that every aspect of the environment is a deliberate challenge, designed to probe your perception, your judgment, and your ability to navigate complexity. And then there are the grand celebrations, the balls, the masquerades, the ceremonial events that transform the court into a living tableau of beauty and danger. At these gatherings, music, light, and movement converge to create an almost hypnotic effect. Courtiers swirl across marble floors, their costumes gleaming with jewels and embroidery, while masked faces obscure identity and intent. These occasions, while outwardly festive, are arenas for subtle power struggles. Alliances are negotiated in passing, rivalries are displayed in nuanced gestures, and the queens themselves move like shadows, observing, testing, and shaping the outcomes of interactions without uttering a single word. Even a slight misstep, a delayed bow, an unintended glance, a misjudged compliment, can mark you as a target. The presence of poison, both literal and metaphorical, is never far from your mind. Rumors suggest that even the most lavish dishes may carry hidden danger, a lesson that serves less as a threat and more as a psychological tool. Courtiers learn to treat every gift, every token, every gesture with suspicion. The queens are known for their mastery of subtlety. They wield fear and uncertainty with the same precision as wealth and charm. In such a world, indulgence is never simple. Even pleasure is a test, every delight a potential trap, and every display of opulence a reminder that survival requires constant vigilance and an unerring sense of perception. The architecture itself plays a role in this orchestration of control. Hidden passageways, ornate balconies, and shadowed alcoves allow for observation, eavesdropping, and the rapid movement of courtiers or agents acting at the queen's behest. You may find yourself walking through corridors that seem straightforward, only to discover that every corner, every archway, every turn has been designed to manipulate perception and monitor behavior. The court is a living entity, with the queens at its center, and every aspect of its construction serves the purpose of maintaining order, projecting power, and ensuring that even the most confident newcomer feels the weight of surveillance. Even leisure is dangerous. A game of chance, a performance, or a casual conversation can conceal hidden agendas. Cards dealt at a table may determine more than luck. They can signal alliances, test loyalty, or provoke rivalry. A seemingly innocent performance, whether a dance, song, or theatrical display, may carry coded messages about political intentions or personal ambitions. In the court of the Dark Queens, nothing is without meaning, and every moment is an opportunity for observation, judgment, and control. The psychological implications of such an environment are profound. The sensory overload, combined with the constant uncertainty, begins to erode confidence. Courtiers are forced to question not only the intentions of others, but also their own perceptions, interpretations, and reactions. You learn that certainty is dangerous. It breeds complacency and invites error. The queens thrive in this atmosphere, using it to maintain their authority and to test the limits of human endurance. Even the most intelligent, observant, or cunning individuals must constantly adapt, for the rules of engagement are neither written nor consistent. They evolve according to the queen's desires and the shifting currents of influence within the court. Favors are similarly double-edged. The queen may grant recognition, a gift, or a title, yet each act of generosity carries implicit obligations. To accept without consideration is to risk entanglement. To display gratitude without strategy is to reveal weakness, and to misuse favor is to invite punishment. Courtiers must constantly evaluate the implications of every reward, weighing both its potential benefit and its hidden cost. The ability to navigate these subtleties is what separates those who survive from those who fail, and it is a skill honed over years, or destroyed in days. The interplay of luxury and danger extends even to the personal interactions between courtiers. Courtiers are expected to present themselves with flawless grace, yet they must do so while negotiating rivalries, alliances, and the constant surveillance of the queens. A subtle glance, a whispered comment, or an accidental touch may carry meanings far beyond what is apparent. The queens exploit these interactions to observe behavior, test loyalty, and manipulate relationships. For newcomers, the challenge is immense: how to participate fully in the spectacle without revealing vulnerability, how to enjoy beauty without being seduced into carelessness, and how to interact socially without inadvertently exposing oneself to danger. Even clothing and adornment are tools and tests. The fabrics you wear, the colors you choose, the placement of jewels, all communicate information about wealth, ambition, allegiance, and discernment. Courtiers are constantly evaluated based on appearances, and the queen's perception of subtle choices can influence favor, opportunity, or punishment. A misjudged color, a poorly placed ornament, or a misaligned accessory may be perceived as ignorance, arrogance, or subtle defiance. Survival requires constant awareness, for every detail can be interpreted, manipulated, and weaponized. The queens themselves model mastery of these principles. They move with confidence and precision, balancing visibility and mystery, power and allure. Their decisions regarding ceremony, display, and indulgence are carefully calculated, often testing courtiers' judgment, patience, and perception. Their ability to combine beauty with danger, luxury with threat, and reward with punishment ensures that no one becomes complacent, that vigilance becomes instinct, and that every moment spent within the court is a test of character, intelligence, and adaptability. Even leisure spaces, the gardens, the private chambers, the hidden galleries, are orchestrated with purpose. Statues, fountains, and architectural features serve both aesthetic and strategic purposes, directing attention, controlling movement, and facilitating observation. Every environment within the palace is an extension of the queen's influence, and no space exists where a courtier is free from the subtle pressures of expectation, surveillance, and judgment. These spaces, which might elsewhere provide respite or enjoyment, instead reinforce the court's omnipresent power and its constant testing of those who enter it. In the court of the Dark Queens, survival is never guaranteed, even for those who arrive with wealth, status, or intelligence. Power in this court is a living, shifting entity, and to endure its pressures requires a mastery of deception. Deception here is not merely a tool, it is a necessity, a shield, a language, and often the only way to navigate a world where every interaction is fraught with peril. To survive even a single day, you must learn to hide your intentions, read the intentions of others, and create a version of yourself that can operate within the court's labyrinthine structures without ever revealing your true self. From the moment you enter, it becomes clear that the simplest truths are liabilities. Honesty, openness, or impulsiveness are weaknesses to be exploited by more experienced courtiers, and the queens themselves are masters at detecting even the subtlest signals of naivety. A glance that lingers too long, a word spoken with unguarded emotion, or a hesitation in responding may mark you as vulnerable, signaling to others that you can be manipulated. Every aspect of your behavior is scrutinized, every expression analyzed, every word measured. Even your silence is observed and interpreted, for the absence of action can be just as revealing as the most calculated gesture. Mastery of deception begins with observation. To survive, you must learn to read people as skillfully as they read you. This involves recognizing patterns of behavior, understanding motives, and anticipating reactions before they occur. Every courtier, from the lowest servant to the most trusted advisor, is a player in a game of power, and their actions, however minor, carry meaning. A smile, a bow, or a fleeting look may communicate allegiance, defiance, or secret intent. The skill lies in deciphering these cues and adjusting your behavior accordingly. One misinterpretation can lead to embarrassment, the loss of favor, or even death. Yet observation alone is not enough. To navigate this court successfully, you must also learn to project an image that conceals your true intentions. Every action becomes a performance, every word a carefully crafted signal. You must be a chameleon, able to adapt to shifting circumstances and adopt the persona that will protect and advance you. If the court demands charm, you must radiate it convincingly. If suspicion is required, you must master it. If submission is safest, you must portray it without betraying resentment or weakness. Constant adjustment requires mental discipline, emotional control, and an almost unnatural awareness of the currents of power around you. Trust in this environment is always conditional. No alliance is permanent, no relationship guaranteed. Courtiers align and realign, forming temporary partnerships to achieve objectives, only to abandon or betray one another when opportunity arises. To navigate these shifting sands, you must understand not only what is visible but also what is concealed. You must recognize who has motives that may conflict with your own, who is vulnerable to manipulation, and who has influence that can either protect or destroy you. Deception, then, is both defense and offense. You must conceal your weaknesses while exploiting the weaknesses of others, a delicate balance that requires constant vigilance. The queens themselves are the ultimate masters of deception. Their power is not only military, social, or financial, it is psychological. They understand that the mind is both a weapon and a battlefield, and they exploit fear, desire, ambition, and vanity with precision. A courtier who misjudges their approach may find themselves caught in subtle traps, a compliment that isolates them from allies, a favor that obligates them to rivals, or a seemingly casual remark that becomes evidence of disloyalty. The queen's genius lies in their ability to manipulate the environment, the people, and the perceptions of both, creating a world in which deception is the key to survival for all but the most cunning. Even daily interactions are fraught with risk. Consider a simple conversation in a corridor. Words are never neutral. A compliment can be interpreted as flattery, a joke as mockery, and a question as interrogation. Is crucial. A response too quick may betray nervousness or inexperience, while a delayed response may suggest calculation or concealment. Every gesture, every inflection, every pause is analyzed and catalogued by those who are already fluent in the court's subtle language of deception. The newcomer quickly realizes that nothing is accidental, nothing is trivial, and that survival depends on controlling not only what you say but also how it is perceived. Deception is also essential in the management of information. Knowledge is power, and information must be carefully gathered, concealed, or manipulated. You must learn to ask questions without revealing too much, to listen without appearing curious, and to respond without revealing intent. Gossip, rumors, and innuendos are the currency of the court. How you use, ignore, or manipulate them can determine your position, your survival, and your influence. One careless word, one failure to read a situation correctly, and you can become a target, a pawn, or worse. The queens exploit this dependence on deception to test courtiers continuously. They create situations in which nothing is certain, in which motives are ambiguous, and in which the consequences of action are unpredictable. A favor granted may be genuine, or may serve to test loyalty. A punishment inflicted may be deserved, or may serve as a warning to others. A conversation may contain both truth and falsehood in equal measure. Navigating this environment requires not only intelligence and cunning but also patience, discipline, and a willingness to embrace ambiguity. The successful courtier learns to operate in shades of gray, to tolerate uncertainty, and to use it to their advantage. Emotional control is paramount. The court preys on impulse, desire, and fear, and any visible reaction can be weaponized by those who are more experienced. Anger may invite attack, pleasure may reveal preference, sorrow may be interpreted as weakness. Courtiers must learn to conceal emotions, to project neutrality when necessary, and to manipulate the impressions they leave on others. This requires a level of self-awareness and self-discipline that few possess naturally. Mistakes in emotional expression are costly, often irreparable, and can be used by rivals or the queens themselves to undermine or eliminate a courtier. Deception extends beyond personal interactions to strategic manipulation of alliances. Courtiers form bonds not out of loyalty but out of necessity, often balancing multiple relationships simultaneously. These alliances are conditional, shifting with circumstances and opportunities. A successful courtier learns to navigate these relationships, to identify the hidden agendas of allies, and to anticipate betrayal. Misjudging intentions can lead to isolation, disfavor, or direct confrontation with powerful adversaries. Deception becomes a tool to maintain flexibility, to protect oneself, and to influence outcomes in an environment where loyalty is scarce and stakes are high. Even the simplest acts, accepting a gift, attending a banquet, responding to a compliment, require consideration. Each action carries potential consequences that extend far beyond the immediate moment. The court is structured so that nothing is accidental. Every gesture communicates something about your character, your ambition, and your alignment. To survive, you must learn to act deliberately, to anticipate interpretations, and to project an image that protects your interests while concealing vulnerability. In the court of the Dark Queens, appearance is reality, and perception is often more important than truth. Courtiers also learn to exploit deception themselves. By controlling information, projecting selective images, and managing relationships strategically, one can manipulate perceptions, influence decisions, and protect oneself from rivals. This requires skill, patience, and an understanding of human psychology. The ability to deceive is not simply about lying. It is about controlling impressions, masking intentions, and shaping outcomes in a world where overt honesty is dangerous and vulnerability is deadly. The queens use these principles as both lessons and weapons. They orchestrate situations in which courtier skills are tested, in which deception must be employed to survive. A favor may come with hidden conditions. A conversation may be monitored. A social interaction may carry unforeseen implications. Those who fail to navigate these challenges may find themselves ostracized, punished, or eliminated. Success requires not only intelligence and observation, but also adaptability, creativity, and a willingness to operate in a morally ambiguous space where rules are fluid and the consequences of error are extreme. Even as you master these skills, you learn that deception is never static. The court changes constantly. Alliances shift, moods evolve, and the queens themselves may alter the rules without warning. What is safe today may be dangerous tomorrow, and the ability to adapt, to anticipate, and to manipulate becomes the ultimate measure of competence. Survival depends not on brute strength or simple cleverness, but on the continuous application of these skills, day after day, in an environment that demands vigilance, intelligence, and cunning beyond ordinary measure. Every success, every carefully calculated action reinforces the lesson. In the court of the Dark Queens, deception is not optional. It is the lifeline that allows you to move through corridors lined with rivals, to speak to courtiers whose intentions are unknown, and to interact with queens whose minds are impenetrable. It is the tool that protects you from harm, the strategy that allows influence, and the skill that ensures your continued survival. Those who fail to master deception, no matter their talent or charm, are swiftly removed from the game. By the end of even a single day in this environment, it becomes painfully clear that survival is a complex, multifaceted challenge. You must conceal your motives, anticipate the motives of others, manage relationships, and navigate uncertainty, all while maintaining the appearance of competence, neutrality, and poise. The pressure is relentless, the consequences unforgiving, and the stakes, your very life, are absolute. In the court of the Dark Queens, the greatest threat is not always visible. It is not a sword, a dagger, or a poisoned goblet, though those are certainly tools of consequence. The greatest danger lies in the mind, yours and that of those around you. From the very first day, the court exerts a subtle, almost imperceptible pressure that intensifies with every passing hour. The environment is designed to erode certainty, to challenge perception, and to instill a constant, unrelenting awareness that one mistake, however small, can be catastrophic. This is the psychological battlefield of the court, and it is where even the strongest, most disciplined individuals can falter. The pressure begins with observation. Every gesture, every word, every glance is monitored and interpreted. Courtiers are not merely watching you, they are evaluating, comparing, and anticipating your next move. The queens themselves observe with a depth of understanding that borders on the uncanny, perceiving subtle signs of fear, hesitation, or overconfidence. The mind becomes a battlefield in which every thought is a potential liability, every instinct a possible weakness. This constant surveillance creates a tension that is invisible but palpable, a stress that accumulates with every interaction, every ceremony, and every banquet. Isolation compounds this pressure. In a world where trust is fleeting and alliances are temporary, the sense of being alone is ever present. Even surrounded by hundreds of courtiers, you may feel utterly isolated, acutely aware that any bond can shift or be betrayed without warning. The court teaches that reliance on others is a vulnerability, and as a newcomer, you quickly understand that your survival depends on your own observation, intelligence, and judgment. This isolation magnifies the psychological toll, creating a sense of constant vigilance, a perpetual readiness for confrontation or manipulation. Fear is another constant companion. Not just fear of physical harm, but fear of error, fear of misinterpretation, fear of losing favor, and fear of being exposed. In this court, mistakes are rarely forgiven, and ignorance is exploited. You learn to fear what you cannot control, the hidden motives of those around you, the unpredictable temperament of the queens, and the invisible network of spies, informants, and rival factions. This fear is a tool, both for the queens and for the courtiers who have learned to wield it, and it creates a mental environment where indecision, hesitation, and paranoia flourish. Paranoia becomes instinct. You begin to notice subtle signs everywhere, a glance that lingers too long, a whisper exchanged in the corridor, a sudden change in a courtier's demeanor. Each of these small events may signify a threat, or they may be innocuous. But in the court of the Dark Queens, you cannot afford to assume safety. The mind becomes a detective, constantly analyzing, questioning, and predicting, and this unceasing scrutiny is exhausting. Sleep, if it comes at all, is shallow, for even in rest, the court's influence lingers. Always seem to shift in memory, conversations replay endlessly, and every interaction is dissected for hidden meaning. The queens understand the power of uncertainty. They create situations in which intentions are ambiguous, actions have multiple interpretations, and consequences are delayed or hidden. This ambiguity amplifies mental strain, forcing courtiers to operate in a constant state of calculation and anticipation. You learn that certainty is a luxury you cannot afford. Knowledge is never complete, and assumptions are dangerous. Even the most trivial events, being seated in a particular place, receiving a gift, or observing a minor interaction, can carry hidden implications that will only become apparent later. The psychological burden of interpreting these signals without error is immense. Even small acts of social interaction carry weight. To speak at the wrong time, to laugh too freely, to show excessive interest or disinterest, any of these can be weaponized by rivals or scrutinized by the queens. The court cultivates a hyper-awareness of behavior, where the mind is in a near-constant state of analysis. This cognitive overload produces a profound mental fatigue, as every decision, no matter how mundane, becomes significant. Over time, this strain can erode confidence, reduce clarity, and make even the most intelligent and capable individuals vulnerable to error. The manipulation of emotion is a core aspect of the queen's strategy. Pleasure, pride, desire, and hope are all leveraged to influence behavior, test loyalty, or provoke reaction. A compliment may be given not as praise but as a trap, a subtle incentive to test obedience or provoke ambition. A public acknowledgement may be calculated to create envy or division. These manipulations require courtiers to constantly question their own emotional responses, to filter instinct, and to maintain control over impulses that, elsewhere, would be natural or harmless. The effort to maintain such control compounds the psychological strain, creating a cycle in which fear, doubt, and vigilance become inseparable from daily life. Trust, when it exists, is tentative and conditional. Every relationship in the court is strategic, and even alliances must be tested continuously. You learn that loyalty is not a given but a fluctuating variable, dependent on circumstances, ambition, and perception. The inability to establish secure, reliable connections intensifies isolation, leaving the mind to process threats and strategies alone. This sense of solitude fosters hypervigilance, a constant scanning for danger, and an acute awareness of every potential vulnerability. The mental burden of maintaining these states for days, weeks, and months is profound, and many courtiers suffer from what would now be recognized as severe psychological stress. Mistakes, both large and small, are rarely forgiven. The consequences of error are magnified in a court where perception is reality, and where the smallest misstep may be interpreted as a challenge, an insult, or a sign of incompetence. A poorly timed gesture, an imprecise word, or an overlooked detail can unravel months or years of careful planning, resulting in social isolation, loss of favor, or direct punishment. The cognitive load required to avoid such errors is immense, forcing courtiers to operate in a constant state of hyper-awareness and self-censorship. Even memory becomes a battlefield. Courtiers must recall not only the vast network of alliances, rivalries, and obligations, but also the subtle nuances of previous interactions, the tones of conversations, and the patterns of behavior of those around them. Forgetting a detail is dangerous. Remembering incorrectly can be fatal. The mind is in continuous motion, cataloging, analyzing, predicting, and responding, and the resulting fatigue is cumulative. The court demands mental acuity that borders on the superhuman, and even minor lapses can have catastrophic effects. The constant interplay of reward and punishment magnifies the psychological pressure. Favor from the queens or influential courtiers can be intoxicating, creating moments of elation, pride, and hope. But these highs are often brief and accompanied by the fear of sudden reversal, a misplaced action, an error in judgment, or an unseen shift in court dynamics can turn a moment of recognition into a source of vulnerability. The emotional oscillation between reward and threat creates a state of perpetual tension, in which neither mind nor body can fully relax. Even those who succeed in navigating these dynamics feel the effects. Courtiers who maintain their positions, manipulate alliances, and gain favor do so at a high cost. Constant vigilance, deception, and strategic behavior are mentally exhausting, creating long-term stress that affects health, perception, and emotional stability. The court tests not only skill but endurance, and the cumulative pressure is a form of control as potent as any direct threat. The queen's mastery of psychological warfare extends to long-term planning. Courtiers are subtly manipulated over months and years, conditioned to anticipate threats, doubt alliances, and question even their instincts. This sustained pressure creates a population of highly alert, intelligent, but constantly anxious individuals, whose mental state is carefully monitored and influenced to maintain the queen's control. It is a system in which endurance, adaptability, and psychological resilience are the ultimate determinants of survival. Even seemingly mundane routines, attending daily gatherings, performing ceremonial duties, participating in private conversations, are infused with hidden significance. Every action is part of a complex network of influence, observation, and strategy. Courtiers must maintain mental clarity while managing social, political, and emotional factors simultaneously, creating a cognitive load that is relentless. The ability to prioritize, to assess risk accurately, and to anticipate consequences becomes essential, and even minor lapses in judgment can be exploited by rivals. Sleep and rest, when they occur, offer little reprieve. Dreams are haunted by the corridors, the faces, and the subtle cues that dominate waking life. The mind remains in a state of analysis, replaying conversations, rehearsing potential interactions, and predicting threats. The boundary between rest and vigilance blurs, and the psychological toll accumulates over days, weeks, and months. Many who enter the court find that even after leaving its walls, the mental scars of constant observation, suspicion, and manipulation endure. In this environment, the mind becomes both tool and liability. It is required to perform at an extraordinary level of perception, analysis, and strategy, yet it is constantly strained, tested, and manipulated. Courtiers who fail to maintain balance succumb to fatigue, paranoia, and errors that can lead to their downfall. Even those who succeed do so at great personal cost, for the mental and emotional demands of the court are unceasing. By the end of even a single week, the psychological toll is evident. Courtiers carry an invisible weight, the constant awareness of surveillance, the need for deception, the unpredictability of favor and punishment, and the relentless demands of strategy. The mind becomes a battlefield, a laboratory of stress, and a test of endurance. Survival requires not only intelligence, cunning, and observation, but also resilience, discipline, and a capacity to endure pressure that would overwhelm most ordinary individuals. The ultimate lesson of the court is that human psychology is the most potent instrument of power. Fear, doubt, ambition, desire, and perception are all manipulated to achieve control. The queen's understanding of the human mind allows them to dominate, influence, and test courtiers in ways that surpass any weapon, any law, or any ceremony. Those who survive are not merely skilled, they are mentally hardened, capable of navigating an environment that would break almost anyone else. Even with all precautions, the psychological toll leaves its mark. Anxiety, hypervigilance, and distrust become constant companions. Courtiers develop patterns of behavior designed to protect themselves, including excessive caution, strategic deception, and constant analysis. Relationships are scrutinized, motives questioned, and interactions rehearsed. Over time, these habits become ingrained, shaping not only how one behaves within the court, but how one perceives the world outside it. The court leaves both visible and invisible scars. By the time a newcomer reaches what might be considered the final stage of their initiation into the court of the Dark Queens, the reality of survival has crystallized into something almost tangible. It is no longer merely about avoiding punishment or manipulating others. It is about understanding that the court operates as a system, an ecosystem in which every element, every action, every thought, and every relationship is interconnected. What you eat, how you speak, who you trust, what you observe, what you conceal, and even what you imagine, all of these factors are threads in a web so intricate that one misstep can unravel the carefully constructed facade you have worked so hard to maintain. The court does not forgive ignorance, it exploits it, and in doing so, it transforms the naïve, the impulsive, and the unprepared into cautionary tales whispered in corridors, serving as lessons for those who remain. The ultimate trial of the court is cumulative. It is the combination of psychological stress, social complexity, manipulation, and constant vigilance that tests every aspect of the human mind and spirit. In this environment, the ordinary rules of survival, strength, intelligence, charm, are insufficient. Even the cleverest individual must integrate every skill they have acquired, the ability to deceive without exposure, to read subtle cues in body language, to anticipate the hidden agendas of multiple parties simultaneously, to conceal emotion, to navigate political rivalries, and to manipulate perception without inviting suspicion. Every moment demands concentration, calculation, and creativity. Nothing is left to chance, and any lapse can be costly. The queens themselves understand the cumulative effect of these pressures. They orchestrate events to create a constant tension, a state of heightened awareness in which courtiers must operate at peak mental and emotional capacity. A single misjudgment can compound across days and weeks, creating situations in which errors amplify, alliances collapse, and even minor oversights become significant liabilities. The court is an evolving landscape in which past actions influence future outcomes in ways that are often hidden from view. What you once perceived as a minor insult may later emerge as a pivotal turning point. A favor granted today may impose obligations that shape your actions weeks or months from now. The court trains its denizens to think not only in immediate terms, but in complex chains of cause and effect that few outside can comprehend. Survival requires an understanding of timing. The court operates on cycles of influence, observation, and manipulation, and the ability to act at the right moment is often more important than the action itself. Speaking too soon may reveal ambition or naivety. Waiting too long may be interpreted as hesitation or weakness. Moving too aggressively may provoke retaliation. Moving too passively may suggest incompetence or lack of resolve. Courtiers must develop an instinct for the rhythms of the court, for the subtle shifts in mood, power, and perception that indicate when an action will succeed and when it will backfire. Timing is not merely tactical, it is existential. At this stage, the stakes are no longer abstract. The consequences of error are visible, immediate, and often irreversible. A courtier who misreads a signal may find themselves publicly humiliated, stripped of favor, or isolated from critical alliances. A gesture of loyalty misdirected may provoke suspicion or retaliation from rivals. Even the most carefully managed deception may fail if the wrong observer perceives inconsistency, subtle tension, or contradiction. The court is an environment in which perfection is demanded, and yet perfection is almost impossible to maintain. It is this tension between the impossible standard and the relentless expectation that defines the ultimate challenge of survival. The mental acuity required at this stage is extraordinary. Courtiers must remember not only the events of the immediate day, but also patterns of behavior observed over weeks and months. They must track relationships, obligations, and rivalries with a precision that borders on obsession. A single forgotten detail, an unremarked slight, a misplaced token, a casual comment, can cascade into a series of negative outcomes that compromise position, influence, and safety. Memory, calculation, and anticipation must work in perfect harmony, for any lapse can be exploited by the queens or by more experienced courtiers. Survival is, in essence, an ongoing exercise in meticulous attention and strategic foresight. Yet the court is not merely a test of intellect. Emotional intelligence is equally critical. Understanding the moods, desires, fears, and ambitions of those around you is essential, for these human variables are the raw material of influence. Courtiers must be able to project composure while detecting subtle shifts in mood, to show respect without seeming subservient, to convey loyalty without suggesting vulnerability, to participate in social rituals without revealing private thoughts. Every expression of emotion, whether spoken or unspoken, must be carefully calibrated to achieve an effect, avoid misinterpretation, and maintain personal safety. Emotional awareness is survival itself in a court designed to exploit every human instinct. The queen's manipulation extends to perception and reality alike. They control the narrative, shaping what is known, what is hidden, and what is suggested. Courtiers are tested not only on what they can see, but also on what they can infer from incomplete information. Misinterpretation can lead to disaster, and the ability to reason from subtle cues, partial evidence, and hidden motives becomes a primary determinant of success. Even seemingly inconsequential events, a misaligned tapestry, a delayed reply, a casual conversation overheard, may contain the seeds of significant consequences. The mind must be constantly active, analyzing, connecting, and predicting outcomes across multiple layers of interaction. Alliances by this stage have become more fragile and complex. Courtiers are no longer simply managing a few relationships. They are balancing multiple, sometimes conflicting, allegiances simultaneously. A single alliance may require supporting one faction while subtly undermining another. Loyalty may need to be feigned in one context, while skepticism is expressed in another. The ability to navigate these overlapping networks of influence is both an art and a science, and failure to do so with precision can expose a courtier to both social and political elimination. Alliances are temporary, fluid, and constantly tested, creating a level of cognitive and emotional strain that is unlike any ordinary social environment. Even physical presence carries meaning. The way one moves through the palace, the proximity to particular individuals, the choice of seating, the direction of one's gaze, all communicate information that can be interpreted, amplified, and used strategically or destructively. Courtiers are trained to be acutely aware of spatial dynamics, to understand how position signals status, influence, or affiliation. Misjudging these subtle cues may provoke offense, invite rivalry, or reveal naivety. The environment itself becomes a constant participant in the psychological challenge, reinforcing the pressure to maintain vigilance in every interaction. The queen's mastery of timing, perception, and psychological pressure is evident in every ceremonial event, every banquet, every meeting. A festival may be designed to test loyalty, a dance to reveal alliances, a conversation to expose vulnerability. Even mundane interactions, passing in a corridor, exchanging pleasantries, are loaded with potential meaning. Courtiers must anticipate the ramifications of each action, predict reactions from multiple parties, and adapt strategies in real time to maintain safety and influence. Failure to do so can be immediate or delayed, overt or subtle, but the consequences are always real. The mental and emotional demands are cumulative. Courtiers must maintain constant vigilance, manage intricate networks of relationships, navigate hidden agendas, and project composure under pressure. The strain is unrelenting, eroding confidence, reducing clarity, and heightening vulnerability to error. Sleep, when it occurs, is restless. Rest, when permitted, is rarely restorative. The mind is conditioned to operate in a state of alertness, anticipating deception, analyzing motive, and predicting outcomes in an environment that never ceases to challenge its inhabitants. Even those who endure learn that success is provisional. Favor can be withdrawn without explanation, alliances may dissolve without warning, and subtle shifts in perception can alter one's standing in an instant. The court does not reward permanence, it rewards adaptability, insight, and resilience. Survival requires integrating every skill learned over weeks, months, or years: observation, deception, strategic timing, emotional control, memory, analysis, and anticipation, into a cohesive approach that can respond to an ever-changing environment. By the final stage, the court has distilled the essence of survival: mastery of self, mastery of perception, and mastery of the intricate dynamics of power. Only those who can maintain composure, anticipate threats, manipulate perception, and navigate complex social networks can endure. Even then, the psychological toll remains, a persistent shadow that colors every thought, every interaction, and every decision. The court has transformed individuals, shaping them into creatures capable of functioning in a world where danger, intrigue, and uncertainty are constants, and where survival demands more than courage or intelligence. It demands near constant, calculated adaptation. The ultimate lesson is clear: The court of the Dark Queens is not merely a social or political environment, it is an arena of psychological endurance. The opulence, the pageantry, the alliances, and the rituals are all mechanisms designed to test resilience, perception, and strategic skill. Every element of the court, from architecture to etiquette, from rumor to reward, is a tool that shapes behavior, influences decision-making, and exerts pressure on the mind. Survival is not about avoiding failure, it is about managing it, anticipating it, and using it strategically to navigate a world in which certainty is a luxury and vigilance is a necessity. By the time a courtier has survived multiple weeks in this environment, the mind has been reshaped. They have developed acute observational skills, sophisticated strategic thinking, and exceptional emotional control. Yet the toll is inescapable. The experience leaves lingering paranoia, heightened sensitivity to social cues, and an enduring awareness of the fragility of position and favor. The court produces survivors, but it exacts a price, a mental, emotional, and psychological endurance that will define them for the rest of their lives. In the final analysis, the court of the Dark Queens is not merely a place of intrigue and danger, it is a crucible of the mind. Those who enter unprepared, unaware, or overconfident rarely endure. Those who survive do so not because of strength, luck, or innate intelligence, but because they have mastered the intricate interplay of observation, deception, strategy, timing, emotional control, and anticipation. The court is a living system, ever shifting, ever demanding, and it tests the very limits of human resilience.